I truthfully did not realize how ridiculous this TBR was until I just filmed for the thumbnail. Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be my June TBR. Honestly, for the month of June, my TBR is quite the mix. Normally, I would say my to-be-read piles comprise about 80 to 90% fantasy. This time around, I have fantasy, obviously, a lot of sci-fi, some historical fiction, some literary fiction, just some like weird literary fiction fantasy hybrids. Truthfully, I have been a little slumpy and I'm having a hard time nailing down exactly what genre is calling out to me the most. So I decided to kind of give myself all of my favorite things in one selection. Also, I tried to pick some shorter books, though I do have a few longer ones on here, just to encourage reading, and I don't know, the feeling of finishing a book is superb, so I wanted to give that to myself quite a bit. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the books I hope to read this June. First book I'm going to chat about, I'm just going to quickly mention as it is a carryover from last month, and that is The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan. This is Wheel of Time book 4. Overall, I would say I'm really enjoying my read of The Wheel of Time for the first time. That being said, going into book 4, I'm really hoping for the world to be cracked open, the lore, the world, the scope of everything to just kind of balloon. I've enjoyed the first 3 books, but they have felt a little smaller in scale than perhaps I was anticipating. I do enjoy the world and the characters. So far, I'm liking book 4. I'm only about 150 pages into this book, so I have quite a bit of it left, as this is a rather long one. I'm listening to it on audio, which is also amazing. Audiobook narrators are great, and I highly recommend listening to this series on audio, but this is the first book I hope to get a bit further on this month. Next up, I would say, is my last like long epic fantasy read that I hope to get to, and that is The Hunger of Gods by John Gwynne. This is a recent release and book 2 to The Shadow of the Gods, which is also by John Gwynne. I read last year, really enjoyed it. It's like a dark Viking-inspired story set in a landscape where the gods once lived, but they have since died, but people use like the artifacts of their body for their own power. Particularly, this is a multi-POV story of 4 different warriors, all going out on their own quests and journeys, some people seeking vengeance, some people seeking glory and fame, and all of them inevitably kind of become intertwined with one another. The combat and the vibe and the setting of this is just so good. It's so Viking and just grim and gruesome. I really enjoyed book 1. Had a rather shocking ending, so I'm looking forward to see how the world continues to be explored and expanded into book 2. Wouldn't say this is like summer vibes, but it is summer vibes for me. Next 2 books are both my sort of sci-fi options for the month. It's kind of funny when you look at them because they are completely different vibes, but they're both, I believe, technically set in space, so depending on which one you prefer, you can kind of pick your poison, if you will. The first one is a bit of a spoiler to an upcoming video I'm going to be posting in about a week or so, and a very recent pickup, but I'm so excited to finally be getting to this sci-fi trilogy, as I've only heard such fantastic things about it, and that is Rosewater by Tade Thompson. I have read other books by this author and really enjoy his writing. Also, my friend Starla loves this. They constantly talk about it, so I'm really looking forward to finally picking it up. The synopsis of this is very vague, but does have a rather dark quality to it, so I'm just hoping it's one that captures my attention and will just have me flying through the pages. But this follows a community, Rosewater, which lives on the edge, quite literally, as it exists on the edge of a very mysterious biodome, and the residents of this community are comprised of the hopeful, the hungry, and the helpless, people eager for a glimpse inside the dome or a taste of its rumored healing powers. Our main character, Cairo, is from this community, and he is a government agent with a criminal past, and he also has a very special ability to be able to feel the space that surrounds the biodome itself. However, at the beginning of the story, he begins to realize that other sensitives like himself are beginning to go missing and perhaps even being killed off. So he decides to investigate further into this phenomenon. Again, the synopsis is vague, but what it kind of tells us about this book really intrigues me. I like that it's very community oriented. I also like this very bizarre and mysterious biodome that seems very central to the plot. I can't wait to pick this book up, and I'm really hoping this trilogy becomes a new all-time favorite. Sci-fi book, as I mentioned, is a very big tone shift from the previous one, and that is Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. This is said to be defiantly joyful and a very fun adventure in the same vein as like Good Omens meets A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. planet. But this is a story following a variety of characters, the first one being Shizuka, and she has quite literally made a deal with the devil. And that is, she has to convince 7 violin prodigies to also sell their soul at a chance at success. She's already convinced 6 to do so, she only needs 1 more, and she is on the hunt for them. Which is why she's very excited to discover our next main character, Katrina Wynn, a young transgender runaway who has an incredible talent with music. In fact, Shizuka is so convinced in Katrina's talent that she can practically feel the curse lifting off of her shoulders already. But then enters our third main character, and they all kind of meet up in a donut shop off a busy street in the San Gabriel Valley in California. And our last main character is a retired ship captain and mother of 4, and I think they all go on an adventure together. Everything about this book just honestly sounds delightful. It seemingly is like a coming of age story, but I hear it has like a romantic component, and I just want all of these people to go on an adventure in space together. I hope it's fun, I hope it's funny and charming, and I have a feeling that though while it's sci-fi, it's gonna be very character focused, and I just want to read this book and smile, you know? The next couple of books fall into the literary fiction or historical fiction category. The first one being a book, honestly, I'm embarrassed I have not read yet. I feel like one of the last people on the planet to have not read this book, and that is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. This book is beloved and lauded, and honestly, I have a feeling it's going to become one of my all-time favorite reads. I also have heard fantastic things about Britt Bennett's writing and her other works as well, so needless to say, I'm assuming this is not going to be the last time you see a Britt Bennett book on my TBR. But this is a literary fiction story that is a family saga, more so a sister saga, and actually takes place over a span of about 40 years, from the 1950s to the 1990s. We follow 2 sisters who grew up together in the same small southern black community, both of them dreaming to escape it. One sister ultimately moves back to the same community to raise her daughter there, and the other sister, who is white passing, decides to completely change her identity and her racial identity. She marries a white man, basically erases everything about her family and her past, and lives by a new identity. This is a story, again, kind of following a large swath of both of these sisters' lives, but I also think it's going to show how they're connected and also connected through their daughters. I'm really looking forward to picking this up. I feel like it's going to be incredibly emotional, but also a book that is going to sit with me for a long time. Obviously, this is a story that touches on family, but also race and identity in America. This is for sure a book I hope to get to this month. The next book from this selection is The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Morano Garcia. I love this author. I've read many books by her. I love her historical settings, her writing, her characters, and this one especially feels like it's going to be very romantic and dramatic, and I just love the concept of it. So once I picked it up, I knew it was going to be on a TBR pretty much right away. But this follows our main character, Nina, and she is about to debut into society, and she dreams of becoming part of a socialite group called the Beautiful Ones, and they're kind of the center of her community and her town. However, though, Nina's debut has already started to go awry because she has a hard time controlling her telekinetic powers, which has resulted in her kind of being the center of gossip within the social scene. But when an entertainer named Hector arrives from out of town, she is quickly kind of swept into his circle and mesmerized not only by his power, which is very similar to hers, but how he's able to harness it and people celebrate it versus kind of gossip about it. Nina and Hector begin to get drawn to one another, and I think she becomes his apprentice. But it says, great romances are for fairy tales, and Hector is hiding a truth from Nina and himself that threatens to end their courtship before it has truly ever begun. Again, I love this author's writing. I think the setting of this sounds incredible. It's not too long, and I feel like I'm going to be able to fly through it. I just can't wait to pick this book up, to be honest. The next book that is on my TBR is Harlem Shuffle by Colson Whitehead, another author I honestly cannot believe I have not read a book from. He has written many books, many of them have won awards, many of them are incredibly lauded, but the synopsis of Harlem Shuffle honestly called out to me right when I read it. When you hear it, it has some very serious elements to it, but it's also told in a way that it just has this charm and vibe that I feel like it's gonna balance light and dark so well. This follows our main character, Carney, and he has a shop on 125th Street that is known to everyone in the community to sell reasonably priced but high quality furniture. He's making a decent life for himself. He loves his wife, Elizabeth, and while his apartment is small and cramped and just across the street from the subway station, he generally is happy. However, few people around him know that he actually descends from a long line of crooks, and the facade of normalcy he's been trying to put on for many years years is beginning to have cracks. Big cracks, because money is tight. So when every now and again his cousin stops by with an odd necklace or bracelet that he doesn't share the origins of, he takes it and he sells it. However, at the beginning of the story, things get a little more complicated for our main character as he gets wrapped up in a heist to rob a very upscale hotel in Harlem. The robbery, of course, goes wrong, and now he kind of finds himself in the center of a criminal underworld, and he has this new clientele of shady cops and other types of underworld individuals he has to help out. It's said to be a family saga masquerading as a crime novel. I feel like this book is going to balance a lot of different things, and it's going to be fantastic at all of them. It sounds dazzling and charming and funny. I can't wait to read this. And then the last selection of books on my TBR, I'm kind of just calling weird atmospheric stories that I'm hoping will keep my attention. The first is another carryover from my May TBR, and that is Between Two Fires by Christopher Bowman. And this is a medieval fantasy horror story that just honestly pulled me in right when I read the synopsis. And essentially the story goes, we're following 3 characters, all from very different backgrounds, having to work together and travel together across the war-torn and plague-riddled countryside of France to save the world. The first is a brutal knight offered one last chance at redemption. The second is a priest and last survivor of his parish who has been drowning his guilt in wine. We follow a young girl who has been orphaned by the Black Death, obeying the commands of angels both terrible and beautiful. I love the concept of the story. I love Christopher Bowman's writing. It's really dark and entrancing, and I just feel like this could be a new favorite as well. Next up is a relatively recent purchase as well, and that is Mrs. Death, Mrs. Death. I love just the title. I think the title in it itself is so clever, and the cover art and everything about this book just looks so flipping cool. But this follows one of our main characters, which is a personified version of death. I love reading books that makes death a person, a character, a figure we can follow. It always fascinates me. It's one of those tropes that is an automatic pickup. Mrs. Death has had enough. She's exhausted and she's looking to find someone she can kind of just unload her conscience to. She's seen and done a lot in her very long, very illustrious career, but she hasn't been able to kind of experience or talk to anyone about it. Enter our other main character, Wolf Wilford, a troubled young writer who is well acquainted with but has never met death until now, who is a working class Black woman who shapeshifts and does her work unseen. Enthralled by her stories, Wolf Wilford becomes Mrs. Death's scribe, writing down all of her experiences and stories throughout her very long career. I've heard so many good things about this. I feel like it's going to be lyrical and dark and strange, and all of that appeals to me in every single way, shape, and form. I love a strange fantasy book, and I just feel like this hopefully is going to check all the boxes. And the next book that is on my more weird side of my TBR is The Bone Orchard by Sarah A. Mueller. I was sold again when I read the synopsis of this. Just the vibe and the atmosphere it exudes is perfect. And honestly, the first chunk of the synopsis, it's best to just hear it for yourself. Tucked away behind a notorious house of ill repute, there is a garden where the trees are grown from bones and nourished by the darkest of secrets. The clattering, ghastly harvest is tended to by women who live and work at the orchard house. One of those women is our main character, Charm, and she is visited every single week by the emperor himself. At the beginning of the story, one day she's actually called to the palace itself to sit at the emperor's bedside as he gives her his dying decree. And that is, she is now responsible in deciding which of his monstrous sons is going to inherit the throne. And she's going to decide which of them get it by figuring out which of them killed him. I mean, need I say more? That just sounds absolutely entertaining. Honestly, every aspect of this book makes me want to read it. First, the synopsis just really gives the vibe that this book is going to be very lyrical, like the writing style and just the overall atmosphere is going to draw me in. But the plot concept is so fascinating. We're essentially following a courtesan who's thrown in the middle and also holds all the power in theory in deciding like who's going to inherit the throne. The palace politics alone just sounds so enticing to me, and I honestly can't wait to follow our main character as she navigates this and hopefully makes decisions that best suit her and what she wants. But yes, I am fascinated by this book. I really hope I love it. I have incredibly high expectations, which could spell out my doom, but there's only one way to find out. And the last book that's on my list is like sort of a thriller, like a fantasy thriller. I wasn't kidding. I have a lot of different genres here, and that is The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd. This is a book that's been honestly at the top of my TBR for a while. I'm actually shocked I have not read it yet, but here we are. It's finally happening. This is one of my most anticipated releases for 2022, and basically follows our main character Nell, who is a cartographer, and she basically followed in the footsteps of her father, who also was a very prolific and famous cartographer himself. But unfortunately, their relationship and his career kind of fell apart at the same time when he became obsessed with one particular map. After his passing, Nell has inherited all of his belongings, and she's going through it and stumbles across a very strange map in her father's office. And when she starts to look closer at this map, she realizes it's the one from all of his obsessions. And she also begins to realize this map might actually be very much more than she initially realized. And from there, things quickly get even more dramatic as other people begin to seek out this map. So to answer the question of not only her father's past, but also what in the world is this map, Nell embarks on a very dangerous journey, hoping to get some answers to her questions. I love that this is like a family saga, thriller sort of story. And then all of that is tied to a very big passion point, which is cartography, map making, which I feel like is a really unique sort of profession to have centered within this book. Honestly, I feel like all pieces of it just sound really cool and really unique. So I'm looking forward to picking this up. And I'm also hoping, because it has that sort of thriller-esque style, it'll be another book I'll be able to propel through very quickly as well, because I need some fast reads in my life. Hey guys, those are all the books I hope to read in the month of June. Let me know down below some books you hope to get to this month, as I would love to know, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye!